that was one of the best opening weekends of college football ever, in my opinion. Um, some people are going to have some tears in their beers, right? We talked about that this weekend. There'll be some fans that got some tears in their beers, and maybe some of them deserve it. And we'll start off with the Ohio State Texas game that happened there in Columbus, Ohio, this past weekend. 14-7, Ohio State comes out the winner of that one. Um, Arch Manning leaves a lot to be desired, right? And both defenses look pretty doggone stout. Um, Ohio State scoring just one touchdown each in the second and fourth quarter there, and that was enough to do it. I'll just cut right to the chase. I told y'all so about Arch Manning. Okay, I've been saying it for a while now that this guy hasn't really showed me anything, and now we're 2 years and one game into Arch Manning, and I was talking about him, and he still hasn't showed me anything. Now I will say this, and I do want to kind of preface. I guess it's not prefacing it because I've already said it now, but I do just want to kind of line this response with this thought. The Ohio State defense is ridiculous. Okay. They're absolutely ridiculous. The backside of that defense is crazy. Caleb Downs is the best player in college football. He's going to be an outstanding pro as long as he doesn't get hurt. He's the total package. He's just the best player in college football. There's no doubt about it. And he's running that defense just as much as any coach is at this point. That defense is really good. It's very complex, and they had Arch Manning literally crapping down the back of his football pants that whole game. And I'm not saying that there aren't a lot of quarterbacks that are going to struggle against Ohio State, but Manning name be damned. It didn't make a damn bit of difference this game. And Arch Manning is a long, long, long ways away from any kind of Heisman talk or any kind of championship talk. Hell, Texas is going to have a really hard time even making the SEC championship. I mean, that's good. That would be a miracle in itself, I think, honestly, with the way that this offense looked. It's just not. I know it was a good defense they played against. I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are, Mason. But I wasn't never really bought into the whole Texas thing this year. There was always going to be things on offense that I needed to see. Defense looked exactly like I thought it would. I will say that Steve Kwiatkowski and company, continue to pump out the jams on defense, and so tip my cap as far as that goes. But I also am not thinking the world of Ohio State's offense at this moment either. Anyway, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, in a nutshell, that's kind of my thoughts on Texas at the moment. We'll kind of backtrack, I guess, to Ohio State in a minute, and I'll tell you what I think about them. But what were your thoughts on this game? The defense for Ohio State just overwhelmed the Longhorns.
Yeah, absolutely. This was a game of two of the top, potentially two defenses in the country. I mean, at this point, we haven't seen too many get tested enough to know, but I saw two outstanding defenses out there on the field. And if that's your jam, I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better football game if you're in the defensive slugfest. On the day, Ohio State finishes with 203 total yards on that game.
Yeah,
actually got beat in that department because Texas ended up with 336. But to your
best
point,
best comment. I real quick. Best comment I saw this weekend. I went back and watched the highlights a couple of times of that game, and somebody had made an extended highlight cut, and it was like 15 minutes. And somebody commented and was like, "Special skill to be able to find 15 minutes worth of highlights in this one."
absolutely.
You could have done a 2-minute highlight and seen all the offensive explosive plays because there was about two of them. It was pretty wild. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I thought that was hilarious this weekend. Right on point.
100%. I mean, you can look at this a lot of different ways. You can look at this if you're Ohio State and say, hey, we just won a game against a top 5 opponent with 200 yards of offense, right? Our defense is going to be pretty good. We can slow roll Julian Sayin throughout most of this season and get away with a defense like this. And on the flip side, Texas can say the exact damn thing because they did it to an Ohio State offense, which has, the best receiving core in the country, I think, still at this point. Carnell Tate looked really good. Jeremiah Smith had a couple drops. It wasn't his best game, but Texas's defense stepping up and rising to the occasion, I think, is what's important here. Given there's obviously going to be a lot of talk about Arch Manning. Is he a bust? Does he still have time to develop? Of course, the answer is like somewhere in the middle, probably. But even with that, even if Arch Manning is a bust and he's an average quarterback, I think that's kind of his floor, is he's going to be an average quarterback, a run first quarterback. I think we know that he can be that archetype, a game manager, and that throws the ball 17 to 20 times a game. I mean, he could be that. His ceiling is obviously much higher, but even if he's just that, let's say he's at his floor throughout the rest of the season, Texas can still win 9 games. I mean, with that defense, there's no doubt in my mind that an Arch Manning who's not turning the ball over and who's throwing for 150, 200 yards a game, that can get it done with the defense like what Texas has. So I just don't want it to get lost in the Arch Manning hype, and everybody wants to talk about Arch Manning, Arch Manning, Arch Manning. I tend to be a little bit more apologistic, where I think he still has time to develop. He wasn't what we thought he was, what a lot of people thought he was. But that doesn't mean that he's not going to be a pro quarterback, or he doesn't have time to develop or anything like that. This was the first time that he's thrown a pass in a college football game outside of Austin. So yeah, it's a big environment. It's a big environment. I thought he would adjust better than he did. It was the moment was too big for him, I think, in this case, and it showed. When you look at the film, it wasn't just that he was missing reads, because he was. It wasn't just that he was missing throws, but he was. It wasn't that he wouldn't pull the ball and run it when he needed to, but that was part of it. It was all of that, all combined in one. And on top of that, he had mechanical issues that seemed to get worse as the game went on. There was never a moment where I was like, okay, now he's locked in. The entire game, mechanically, there were issues and poor decision making. I do think that he will get better. Does that mean I can really confidently say that I've got Texas in the SEC championship right now? I don't think so. I think we saw a couple of better teams in the SEC this week. But, this is still a really good Texas team, and I think that they're still definitely a fringe playoff team. Just because you lose by 7 points to potentially the number 1 team in the country, that doesn't mean much in college football, especially in week 1. So I think there will be a lot of people who just completely write Texas off this week and are going to be proven wrong by the end of the year if things go the way that I think they're going to go with this defense in particular.
I agree with everything on the defense. Here's my final thing on Arch, and we'll kind of transfer ourselves over to the Ohio State, the winner's side of this thing, because that's who deserves to be talked about, I think, a little bit more. But I've seen Arch Manning play in a lot of games at this point over the last couple of years. There's been games that he started, and I get it that some of them were in Austin, most of them were in Austin or whatever. I've never seen him make contested throws. I've never seen him be able to pick up a blitz with his eyes and move to the side and make a throw. I've never seen him work his way through his progressions. So until at this point, 2 years and 1 game in, until I see him do it, I'm not going to believe that he can. I can't. Because I just don't. I've never seen it happen. And every touchdown he's ever thrown, spring game, anything, there's not been a defender within 10 yards of that guy. And that's not going to happen a whole lot this year, man, because that wide receiver core for Texas is a shell of its former self.
Yeah, very.
It's not anywhere close to what it was last year, and it's not just the wide receivers. Gunnar Helm's gone too, so there's going to need to be contested throws made, and I don't trust him to do it because he's just so confused. I mean, it's unbelievable, and I know that the coaching staff is agreeing with me, because whenever Texas was on the doorstep trying to score a touchdown, what did they do? They ran it 4 times.
Yep. Yep.
They did not put the ball in the air, not one time. There's no trust from this coaching staff and Arch Manning to make these plays.
And no
So
identity in the offense. Just
not
absolutely no identity.
not at all, not at all, man. And I'm just not really seeing it. The offensive line didn't look great. Sitting here looking at the rushing numbers, there was Wisner. He obviously had the best day, averaged 5 yards a carry, and I think he's a pretty decent back. I expect C.J. Baxter to do something this season. I mean, that's really Texas is going to have to adopt that identity of, we are here to run the football, because Arch is just, he's not going to throw you to wins. And 30 times he threw the football. I think Arch is one of those quarterbacks that, we used to talk about Jake Fromm all the time. We're Georgia Bulldog fans here. And the old saying used to go, if we threw the ball more than 30 times, we're losing. That was the old saying with Jake Fromm. And I'm not trying to compare Jake Fromm and Arch Manning. Arch Manning's got a long way to go before he's even in that conversation with Jake Fromm, to be honest with you. But that's kind of where I'm at with this is that if Texas at any point this season is throwing the ball 30, 35, 40 times, Clemson threw the ball like 40 times this weekend. They're in the same boat. If you've got to throw it that many times, you're probably not winning that football game. And if you take out the one drive, Arch Manning had one good drive. And for some reason or another, I can't remember. I guess it was in the second. No, it was in the fourth quarter. That's what it was. And they went kind of like a hurry up 2-minute. And I think they got a personnel that they were going against, Ohio State's defensive personnel that they liked. They kept them on the field and they marched right down. But other than that, if you take those numbers out of Arch Manning's numbers for the day, he really threw for about 100 yards, and that's just not anywhere close. And now let's talk about Ohio State. Julian Sayin didn't look amazing either, but 13 of 20 hits a lot different than 17 of 30. You're negatively affecting your team a whole lot less whenever you're only throwing it 20 times. So Ohio State's got their own quarterback things that they're going to have to work out. Julian Sayin is another guy that's still got a lot to prove, and I've got hope that he can figure it out as well. But I wasn't impressed with the Ohio State offense. I don't know anybody that was. They just didn't look great so far. The running back room is certainly a shell of its former self. Jeremiah Smith, I wanted to talk about this because me and you talked about it during the game, and I've been trying to make sure I didn't forget. But Jeremiah Smith looks really frustrated with Julian Sayin.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're the only ones maybe that were talking about that this weekend or saw that. But Jeremiah Smith doesn't look super happy right this second. And now I know he had a rough day, but it was before the drops where he was already getting frustrated with Julian Sayin, throwing his hands in the air, and very clearly had a look on his face like, this guy's missing me, and so that's to be expected from a young quarterback. I'm not sitting there saying Julian Sayin, go to hell because you missed but there is a certain level of frustration building up, I think, with Jeremiah Smith already early in this season. So makes me wonder what was going on in camp. Carnell Tate was the guy that you really talk about in this one. He looked really good. And I think you can thank Jeremiah Smith a little bit for that because he does command a lot of attention from the defenses. So I think it gives Carnell Tate more opportunities. Max Clare had one nice catch, one nice play, but really, really quiet day for the offense. Defensive struggle in this one, and I'm here for it. I don't mind defensive football games, but you can't walk away from this one thinking the offenses look real good either side.
Yeah, and I did hear an interview with Ryan Day after the game, and this was like immediately after, not in the press conference or anything, but just there with a sideline reporter, and he said, really felt like we could have opened things up for Julian, but didn't feel like we needed to. So I think that this was a game where potentially on both sides, both offenses are saying, hey, let's try to figure out what our identity is, not put a ton out there, because at the end of the day, this game, while it matters, it's not a make or break situation for either of these teams. So I do think that there is an element to that could have gone on here. Now, both coaches, they want to win these big games, make no doubt about it. But I do think that there was a lot of conservative play calling on the offensive side of the football for both sides, because we didn't see out of the Sarkisian offense what we would typically see. You mentioned the goal line stand down there, run the ball 4 times in a row. I mean, it wasn't even – there wasn't a whole lot of motions and, flash and things like that you would normally see with a Sarkisian offense. The wrinkles just weren't there like you would typically see. And I think that just – going in with a new quarterback had a lot to do with it. A young kid in Julian Sayin, who's only in year 2. I mean, that probably had a lot to do with it.
Yeah, the coaching staffs don't trust these quarterbacks yet, and I don't either. I don't either. And so I get it. You got to see it. You got to see it. Last thing before because this will actually be a recurring thing throughout this, and going for it on all the 4th downs. I don't know what these coaches are thinking. Texas treated the first part of this game like it was a video game. Like, I'm not going to punt because we're just playing a video game, and it's like, I just couldn't for the life of me understand it. There was 21 total points scored in this game, and neither one of these teams could give it 2 damns about flipping field and getting field position. And I think that is just stupid. Take your 3s and play field position, man, because there's no telling what could have happened in this game if Texas would have done that. It was that close of a game. This was literally a game of inches, this one. So there's no telling the effect. Maybe you back them up into their own end zone. Maybe they mess up on the kick return and you back them up into their own end zone. And then you get a safety like what happened to South Carolina, last night in that game. And then you get the ball punted back to you and you don't know what can happen. You can't just play these games like, we're so good on offense that we don't even have to worry about punting on. Well, you know what? Texas sucked on 4th down this past weekend, and I think they deserve to lose this football game just on that premise alone. Going for it on 4th down over and over, man, I don't care what the numbers say. Probabilities are probabilities, and I guarantee you a bunch of those situations this past weekend, AI or whatever, whoever's giving them these probabilities probably said to go for it. Well, guess what? It bit them right in the ass this weekend. And all the Texas Longhorns fans, I appreciate, how big of fans a bunch of them are and everything, but they've been complete buttholes on the internet for the last 10 months. Okay. And they all just need to chill out for a minute and let this Texas Longhorn team settle itself out, because I'm telling you, man, there was a lot to be desired on that offense, and a lot to be desired for an offensive-minded head coach and a guy that's been in your program going on 3 years now at quarterback. That was pretty bad, man.